Hello guys and welcome on the show. Today I'm with the one and only Pietro Tomajer, who is the founder of the Limited Edition UK. Pietro, for the people who don't know you already, could you please introduce yourself and explain what you are doing for a living?
Oh wow! So it's a long story. But I'll try to keep it short. Nice to see you, first of all, Badouin. It's a pleasure, and it's a pleasure to be with Tourbillon Watch today. So we are the limited edition. We are passionate about artisan, independent watchmakers. We are individually passionate in our company, and we decided with our shareholders to create a business related exclusively to the artisans. I am old enough to have lived the second wave of independent watchmaking at the time when MB&F, Urwerk, just to mention a few examples, became a thing. So I'm talking about the beginning of the years 2000, 2005, 6, 7. But I'm not old enough to have lived the first wave of legendary independent watchmakers at the time of the foundation of the AHCI, Vianney Alter, Vincent Calabrese, Sven Andersen, Ludovic Baluard, etc. But I became passionate because of those individual people and those stories. And I have kind of humbly decided to try to create a business around it across the years.
And when we look at what you are doing with the limited edition and yourself, what's, on your point of view, what makes the limited edition so unique in the watchmaking landscape?
So there is a functional, if you like, reason, I think, for our existence, and there is also a conceptual, I guess, reason. The functional reason is simply, I used to be a sales manager, if you like. I used to develop markets within Richmond at the beginning, Girard-Perregaux then, and a smaller brand called Graham Watches at the time. And I was trying to convince retailers around the world that independent watchmaking was the future for a long time. Why? Because I believe that if we are all so passionate about watchmaking, it is for those anachronistic values that artisan watchmaking brings along. We don't need watches, we all know, but we need the emotions that watches can give when they've been, passed on for generations from our grandparents, from our parents, from our friends, relatives, etc. So, but in those days, functionally, retailers needed brands that could turn over very quickly, to be able to justify the big overheads that they had to face. So it was a hard job for me to convince them that, in those days, gambling on Girard-Perregaux or Graham watches was a good idea for their future. So it kind of, we had some success in spells, but it was always very much up and down. So at one point in 2015, I decided that maybe I was destined to be the one, to be that retailer that only focuses on the independents, because if I was honestly passionate about the idea that, yes, the future lies in the independents, so why don't I do it myself? And that's what I did. And this is the functional side. From the conceptual side, I knew for sure that there are so many collectors or people simply, passionate about independence and artisan crafts, that I knew that there was a clientele there. I knew that just because a store in the center of, say, Rome cannot sell every day an independent watchmaker, that doesn't mean that independent watchmaking is inexistent or inefficient or unimportant. And so I was sure that there would have been something. And yes, we were lucky. We started with 4 brands being official retailers.
And which were at the time?
At the time, and I'm still very grateful, so this goes with my gratitude as well, as I mentioned them. One was Graham, for which I used to work, so they gave me the pleasure of incorporating them. Andrea Streller, one of the absolute top masters of the trade. Custos at the time, just because a friend of mine was working at Custos. And then, and he liked my idea. And then critically, Konstantin Chaikin. Which in 2015 was not what Konstantin Chaikin is today. I mean, he was already a genius, but he was just not known as much as he is known today. And Konstantin Chaikin in particular became a bit the emblem, the symbol of what we were trying to give as a message. And now there is, as I said, over 50 watchmakers in basically three categories. One is the contemporary watchmakers, the solo artists, Vianney Alter, Ludovic Balois, Andrea Strella, etc. Also the newer, younger ones, that are up and coming every month, I would say. Then the independent brands, makers like Armin Strom, Kudoki, Trilob, that you're very obviously familiar with, being a French watchmaker. And then micro brands. Micro brands is a term I don't like, but for simplicity, we define micro brands, small ventures of small independent watchmakers that come into the arena without the big investments, but just to show their creative way of interpreting watchmaking. And what we do, we don't have a showroom yet, so I didn't want to be a store manager in my second part of my life. I'm turning 50 next year, and I wanted to have fun with this. If it was going to be my venture, it had to be in my terms in a way. So I don't have to spend my time managing a store, but I spend my time creating content every day. I started on my own, and now there's 15 people at the limited edition that every day, relentlessly, we try to create interesting contents out there to educate without patronizing, but to educate about the world of independent watchmaking.
I think, on my point of view, it's what makes the limited edition so unique, because the other question I had for you, which is, what do you bring to the indies watchmaker that we are able to see on your website? Is not, yes, you do sell their watches who are available on your website, but not only you have that duty to educate the people to them, to educate the people to their know-how and why, by interviewing those people, or by doing some review with also Johnny, who is
he's a legend.
So funny, a legend, as you said. But could you deep dive into it? So if I'm today a watchmaker or a creator of a micro brand, and I heard about you and what you are doing, what will you bring to me? And could you deep dive into it?
Yeah, so passion is a word that is abused in our world, but it's very important to explain a concept. When you have a hobby that is fueled by your passion for something, you want to enjoy every single time you are thinking, you're spending energies to feed that particular hobby or passion. So for me, being a retailer is not just about putting a watch on the shelf and hoping for the best, hoping for somebody to come in with already a knowledge and already the ability to understand what's on that shelf, pick it up, pay, and go. For me, it's like, for example, I can give an example. I am passionate about guitars. When I research about guitars, when I create my knowledge, when I watch, the contents, etc., that's also a time where my passion is enjoyed by me. It's also as critical as when I finally get the guitar, which is also obviously a key moment, but it's the consequence of all the enjoyment I had before in educating myself, in making my pre-choices, in kind of streamlining my ideas. So this is where we bring, we try to bring a certain value. Again, if I had a store in London, for example, I would have to spend my time managing the store because it's such a risky and I have plenty of respect for all the traditional retailers out there because I know how hard it is to manage those operations. But then my attention will be diverted to not being able to give that value that actually we want to give, which again is exposure for every brand, regardless of how big the brand or the maker is. Exposure means telling the story, the genuine story from the beginning, explaining it and putting it into a context by interviewing, visiting manufacturing premises, having collectors events where we expose these collectors and these brands. The star of the show is never the limited edition. The star of the show is always the maker, because that's our role. We are a facilitator by exposing the true story, the honest story of every single maker. And because we have an array of over 50 makers that we consider in our portfolio, we try to be as neutral as we can without coming necessarily with an agenda. If I was a retailer retailing 5 brands, you know what, but when you come to my store, which brands do you think I'm going to talk to you about? You know, what am I going to put on the table for you? Yeah, and the ones I have and I retail, if you like. Yeah. Whereas here the idea was to give to the collectors first a broader enjoyment of the hobby. So then when they decide to buy a niche, independent, unknown, whatever timepiece, possibly they may trust us to do that for them, basically. So it's slightly convoluted, but being a passionate person myself with hobbies, I think I do understand that system. And I think with the limited edition, we managed to apply it onto watches, we do our best to take away the burden from some smaller watchmakers that have no time, no means to do marketing. We don't charge for our videos, for our content creation. It's part of what we offer to the makers. On the other side, everything is destined to create value for collectors, and value include how much, if you have a hobby, how much you enjoy the time you spend within that hobby, not necessarily by means of buying, but what happens before you make the decision of buying. And I hope I answered your question. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
But it really shows what you are bringing to the table. It's more like, as you said, it's more about just only for the watchmaker side selling their watches, and on the collector side showing what is on the table currently, what they are able to buy. It really entertain the passions of the people by opening the door to the atelier of the watchmakers. And making sure that all the collectors who are following you understood what they will see. And and
it's always about thinking laterally, because you know yourself, whatever you do, as I observe Tourbillon Watch, you try to give a different take, a different spin to what has already been done out there. So that's our guideline, you know. We always try to find ways of giving value to both the makers and the collectors that have not been yet considered in watchmaking, because we have a pretty standardized way of conducting the business, you know, through traditional retailers that have all my respect. But with that same respect, humbly, I think there was kind of a gap that wasn't covered. And that's what we're trying to do. I've always been like that. I'm a big music person. I've never been into the mainstream. I've always been into the alternative culture of in music, in art, in contemporary art as well, in guitars, you know, collecting, for example. And I find infinite pleasure in scouting the unknown, you know, in finding the ultimate watchmaker. I can give you an example. Atelier Haute Complication, Vladimir Negot, formerly FP Journe, when he decided to come out with his first watch, nobody really... nobody had thought to give him visibility.
Yeah,
we did. We've been rewarded with a fantastic success. Our collectors love the story, love the guy. By the way, there is a new video that talks about Vladimir. He's also a guitar fanatic, so it's quite fun. And that's where I thrive. I don't ask myself, how many of these watches can I sell? If the answer is 100, I take the brand. Otherwise, forget about it. No. We do the work before of scouting, and then we'll see if we can sell something or not. That's kind of counterintuitive in a way.
And what would make you say, okay, mission accomplished, I can go to bed, the limited edition accomplished its mission, I can die peacefully? What would make you say that?
I don't know. It's a great question. I see the limited edition not as a middleman. I see the limited edition as a brand. Humbly speaking, we want to become synonymous of the idea that contemporary watchmaking is a form of art that needs to be nurtured and exposed. So because as a form of art, it will never stop, because people, it doesn't matter how digital this world is going, it doesn't matter how AI is becoming predominant, useful, whatever. The more digital develops, the more we are humans, we will find fascinating talking about the art of watchmaking, like as many other arts. So all those arts where the human touch, the human contribution is fundamental. So for me, independent watchmaking, the real artisans are the ones that are becoming a symbol of what humans can do, if behaved like humans. And so I think for the limited edition, it will never stop, because every year there are incredible talents coming out from the schools of watchmaking across the world. And when Pietro would not be here, as I said, there's 15 people at the limited edition. There's Oliver, the watch collector. There's Johnny, in Ireland, and 12 other people. The mission will be ongoing to give voice, visibility to the artists of watchmaking. Selling comes later. The first mission is to create the knowledge. And so in that respect, I don't think we can say the limited edition would ever accomplish
its mission.
The mission, if you like. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's ongoing. Never mind.
Yeah, a bit like an art gallery. When does an art gallery stop? There will always be a new artist coming up and worth talking about, and that's how I see it. So hopefully you will be here for a long time. Hopefully.
Hopefully. Let's now speak about the market. Some people said that currently there is a kind of a slowdown. In this case, is it the case in the indies market? And if so, could you explain us why and how?
Yeah, I think there is. There is certainly a change compared to the last 3 years, where everything has become illogically exciting. But I think so. If you look at the market with watching these two fists, one being the collectors that were in the industry, in the game, to mainly speculate. Mm-hmm. And one is the part of the clientele that was more focused in feeding this hobby. They have a hobby. It's a hobby. It's part of their life. You can't, like Biver says, you can't retire from a passion. The market can go up and down, can do whatever, but I like guitars. If tomorrow I have zero in my bank, I still like guitars, and you find ways to feed your hobby somehow. So I think this part was fueled by the fact that certain mainstream brands became very arrogant in some ways of behaving, and many people didn't have access to watches that they liked. And so they thought for a while that independence could be an answer, and a kind of or brands alternative to the ones they chosen became an answer, and they would have still been able to protect whatever investment they were thinking to put on a watch. This segment of the market, I think, is been reducing slightly, or quite importantly. I think now we're working with this segment of the market, which is the market of the real passion, those that they can't live without reading about watches every day, thinking about watches, and educating themselves about watches. So I'm old enough to have seen these kind of contractions a few times over the last 25 years. You can only hope that everybody, the makers, the retailers like us, will behave in a way that will simply keep feeding that passion without panicking around the idea of trying to generate the same amount of sales that were generated in the last 3 years, if you like.
Yeah.
For the independents, it's a bit. This was in general, but for the independents, it's a bit different because we have sold watches for the next 2 years, basically. So we have orders through deposit paid for the next couple of years. So that gives you a buffer to kind of little by little understanding how the market will develop. But the independents, they produce very little quantities, and so the amount of people to satisfy is lower. And so it's less prone to actually feel the waves of contraction and expansion, if you like. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a long answer to say that, we feel the market has changed. We hope optimistically. You always have to be optimistic, when you run a business, that the work done. So if the work done so far was seriously done, you should be able to navigate also, these periods. But selfishly, I can say that for the next couple of years, we should be okay. The independents still we receive inquiries every day, every single day. We're selling, thank God, watches every day, and people don't retire from their passions. It's just a problem of numbers, where the numbers will sit now. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And can you share to us maybe an encounter that you lived and you think really embodies the indies brands or indies watchmakers?
Yes, so I was asked this question, I think, before once only. I love this question. And I think I mentioned Vianney Alter. And when he talked to me about how he conceived what is, I have many Grail watches, but one of them is definitely the Deep Space. If I have to choose one Grail watch, it would be the Deep Space by Vianney Alter. And he was telling me how he conceived the idea and even the technology by dreaming about it, to the point that the few times where his dreams were stopped, he had to force himself to go to sleep again, to be able to finalize the project. Anyway, that was one. But another one more recent is Vladimir Nego. If you go on the Atelier Haute Complication website and you see the videos that Vladimir did to explain his watches, it's absolutely hilarious. It doesn't even talk about the watches at all. He talks about himself a little bit in an indirect way. And you can see an artist at work with the many passions in his head. And that's the 360 creative person. Yes, he loves watches, he makes watches, but he's influenced by so many other things in his life. And when I met Vladimir, it was amazing. I went into his workshop and there was a little sip of whiskey on the side, smoking a cigarette and just talking about life, basically. And then steadily we go and talk about watches as a side thing. And those are the kind of events that reminds me why we're here, what we are here to expose. We are here to expose those stories that actually are the ones that much more so than just owning a watch on your wrist, you become part of that. And so we're still, to my knowledge, the only official retailer for Atelier Haute Complication, but I think for the success we had with them, they are destined to have a big role in the world of independent watchmaking. And I think the spontaneity and genuinity of these characters in particular will play a big part.
That's nice. Pietro, I would like to thank you for, first of all, your time, all the answers to my questions. I hope people understood a bit more about yourself and what you are doing at the limited edition. Again, thanks a lot for what you are doing for all the indies brands watchmakers. It's always a pleasure to follow your content. I hope to see you very soon. Maybe it will be during Watches and Wonders, or if you come to Switzerland, the door is open. We don't have whiskey, but we can find something similar.
Don't worry, I'm too old for that. And thank you, Badouin. I've been where you are. I appreciate your proactive way of exposing stories that could be of interest to someone out there, and the work you're doing is phenomenal. So thank you for giving us the space and the time and the energy, and wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.